I returned home from Europe to find my daughter had locked me out of my own room and moved me to the basement to accommodate my son-in-law's parents. When I discovered this casual betrayal was just the start of a calculated fraud involving forged checks and an attempted property theft, I knew I had to choose: lose my dignity or destroy my family to save myself. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. I stood in the foyer that late October evening, jet lag pressing down on my temples like iron clamps. My suitcase was a dead weight by my feet, and the air in my house felt thick, unfamiliar. I had spent 2 weeks leading a history tour through Italy, watching the golden light of Rome spill over ancient stones, feeling purpose course through my veins. Now, coming home to Riverton City felt like landing on a different planet. The foyer light was already on. Two elderly people I had never seen sat on my couch, watching my television. The woman, Bethany Dunn, had a placid, expectant look. The man, Victor Dunn, held the remote, freezing mid-click. They turned toward me in perfect, startled unison. My exhaustion-fogged brain seized up. "Who are you?" The words came out harsh, tasting of travel and confusion. The man lowered the remote slowly. "Who are you?" He raised his voice toward the back of the house. "Niles, someone's at the door." Niles appeared from the kitchen, a bottle of cheap beer already in his hand. 9 in the morning or 9 at night, it made no difference to him. His expression was annoyingly casual, like a host who had misplaced his invitations. "Oh, Perk's back," he said, using the nickname I despised. He waved his hand between us. "Dad, this is my father-in-law, Paul. Paul, these are my parents, Victor and Bethany Dunn. They're visiting for a couple weeks." Visiting. The word felt slippery and wrong. And I stared at him, then at the strangers, then back at Niles. "Visiting? Since when?" Niles took a sip of beer, his free hand waving dismissively. "About 10 days now. Cara didn't text you?" "No." My voice was gravel. "She didn't." "Huh? Well, you know Cara." He shrugged, dismissing the entire breach of hospitality as a simple forgetfulness, implying I was the one at fault for expecting common decency. "Anyway, Dad, Mom, this is Paul. Paul, meet the parents." Victor managed a tight nod. Bethany offered a small, polite smile. This wasn't their fault. They were pawns in whatever scheme Niles had cooked up. I needed quiet. I needed my space. I grabbed my suitcase handle. "Excuse me." I headed for the stairs. 14 hours of travel, and now this. I just needed my bed, my room, some silence to process the violation. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my legs shaky. I reached the second floor, turned down the familiar hallway to my master bedroom, the room I had shared with my wife for 33 years before cancer took her. The door was closed. I always left it ajar. My alarm spiked. I shifted the suitcase, turned the knob. Locked. I knocked. Tentatively at first, then harder. The door opened a crack. Bethany Dunn, Niles's mother, appeared, already in a robe and curlers, ready for sleep. She looked at me with polite, impenetrable finality. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft but firm, "but we've already settled in for the night." I stood there, a man locked out of his own life. This is my bedroom." Her confusion deepened, perfectly feigned or perfectly genuine, I couldn't tell. "Niles said this was the guest room for us. He said the other room was in use." "Where are my things?" She looked genuinely puzzled. "I don't know. Perhaps you should ask Cara." The door closed. I heard the lock click into place. I stood in my own hallway, blocked by a stranger. The humiliation was a white-hot pressure behind my eyes. Down the stairs, each step heavier than the last, I found Cara in the kitchen. She was wiping down counters that were already clean, her back to me, a shield. "What is going on?" My voice was loud, strained. "Where are my things?" She kept wiping. Circular motions, repetitive, avoiding. "Dad, don't make a scene." "Don't make a scene?" The volume surprised me. I come home to strangers in my house, in my bedroom, locked. She finally turned, her eyes fixed somewhere past my shoulder, on the humming fluorescent light. "We moved your stuff to the basement. Niles's parents needed a proper room. They're elderly. Stairs are hard for them." You understand? She delivered the explanation as if displacing the homeowner was simple, undeniable logic, as if I should have expected it. You didn't even call, I said, the bitterness rising in my throat. You didn't ask permission. Niles entered, positioning himself between us. Percy, don't be childish, it's temporary. Childish. That word dripped with the patronization I had grown to hate. This is my house, Niles, and we all live here. He returned, his tone smooth, dismissive. My parents needed somewhere comfortable. Besides, you're alone. You don't need such a large room. The basement has everything you need. Everything I need. I repeated the words, tasting their bile. Exactly. He nodded as if we'd reached an agreement. Now, if you'll excuse us, it's late. We can discuss this more tomorrow when you're less jet-lagged. He guided Cara out of the kitchen. She went without protest, without looking back. I was left standing alone, fluorescent lights humming overhead, their footsteps receding toward the living room, toward normalcy, toward the life continuing above while I had been shoved below. The basement stairs descended into dampness. I flipped the switch. A bare bulb illuminated concrete walls, exposed pipes, and the shabby reality of my new accommodations. My belongings were piled in the corner, clothes spilled from boxes packed hastily without care. My books, first editions I'd collected over decades, were stacked haphazardly like garage sale surplus. The bed was the old guest bed, the one with springs that announced every movement. I sat on the edge. They creaked loudly, protesting my weight. The mattress sagged in the middle. A musky smell filled my nostrils. On top of one box, someone had placed the framed photograph. My wife and me at the coast, wind in her hair. At least they'd included it. I picked it up, held it in both hands. The smooth glass, the familiar faces, a time when family had meant loyalty. Something inside me cracked. This was the sound of illusion shattering, the illusion that being kind meant being respected, the illusion that my daughter saw me as her father rather than as an obstacle to be moved aside. I set the photograph carefully on the concrete floor, leaned back against the thin pillow, and stared up at the ceiling. Above me, floorboards creaked. Footsteps, voices murmuring, television sounds, life happening in my house, in the spaces I'd been exiled from. But even then, in that moment of defeat, something else was forming. A small, hard seed of realization. They weren't stopping here. They were escalating. They viewed me not as family, but as property, and property needs to be controlled. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd start the fight. Morning arrived with the mercy of a headache and the indignity of a back that refused to straighten. The dampness of the concrete walls had worked its way into my bones. Forcing myself upright took more effort than a man should expend just to get out of his own bed. I dressed in wrinkled clothes pulled from my suitcase and climbed the basement stairs. The sounds grew louder as I ascended. Laughter, domestic chatter, the sound of sizzling oil. When I emerged, I found the entire household gathered at the kitchen table. Cara at the stove, flipping pancakes. Niles gesturing widely, entertaining his parents, Victor and Bethany, with some anecdote. They laughed on cue, a perfect picture of the family I was excluded from. I moved to the coffee maker, poured a cup, and took a sip. My eyes narrowed. Wrong, bitter, cheap. Nothing like the premium blend I always purchased. I turned to face the kitchen. Where's my coffee? The blend I always buy. Cara didn't look up from the stove. She flipped a pancake with unnecessary force. Dad, don't be so picky. Coffee is coffee. This is what we drink now. It's not about being picky. I've bought the same brand for 20 years. I set the cup down, the bitter liquid sloshing. I noticed the table arrangement for the first time. 5 plates, 5 sets of silverware, 5 chairs occupied. I moved to the remaining empty chair and sat. Nobody offered me food. After a long moment, Cara glanced over her shoulder. Did you already eat? No, I just woke up. She shrugged, turning back to the stove. Well, I made exactly enough for 5. Didn't know you'd want some too. The arithmetic landed like a slap. 5 people mattered. I didn't factor into the count. You made breakfast for 5 people, I said slowly, emphasizing the word. In my house, and I'm not one of them. Niles interrupted, his tone jovial, as if I were performing a comedic bit. There's cereal in the cabinet, Paul. Help yourself. I stood and walked to the refrigerator. I needed the cold air to wash over my face, needing space from their casual cutting cruelty. I pulled open the door, nearly empty. Beer, Niles's preference, and some picked-over takeout, nothing substantial, nothing I would have purchased. The freezer held more beer and frozen pizzas. I stood there, cold air washing over my face, the understanding settling in. This hadn't been impulsive. This was coordinated. My groceries replaced with theirs, my preferences erased, my home transformed one substitution at a time. This wasn't just disrespect. This was control. I closed the door. My appetite had vanished. I needed out. I needed clear air. The walk to the Riverton Main Library took 15 minutes. Inside, I wandered through the legal section, trying to steady my pulse. Near the shelf marked Property Law, I found a woman about my age examining books on family law and elder law. She caught me looking and offered a wry smile. Not the cheeriest reading material, is it? Her directness invited conversation. We ended up at the small coffee shop inside the library. Her name was Eleanor L. Hayes, and she was a retired real estate attorney with sharp, observant eyes. She told me her son had attempted similar tactics, slowly changing documents and treating her like she was incompetent. They think because we're older we're helpless, she said, stirring her coffee. I call it the soft coupe. I found myself telling her everything. The locked door, the basement, the breakfast arithmetic, the casual erasure. Words poured out that I hadn't intended to share. Her expression hardened as I spoke. Paul, she leaned forward, tapping the table. This isn't just disrespect. This is the beginning of financial exploitation. They're positioning to take everything. Check your utility bills, your bank accounts, your credit cards. I'm betting this has been planned for a while. She slid a business card across the table. Call me after you look. You're going to need help. I walked home, dread growing with each step. The house was quiet. I descended to the basement, opened my laptop, and started searching. I logged into Riverton General Electric's website. I entered my account number. The contact information displayed on the screen made my hands shake. Changed 3 months ago. Email address listed, Cara Patterson. Phone number, Cara Patterson. Authorization notes, daughter taking over account management due to father's declining health. My jaw went cold. Declining health. Water Bureau, same pattern. Gas company, same lie. Internet provider, same 3-month time frame. Every utility systematically transferred, all claiming I had declining health and needed someone to manage my affairs. I pulled up my bank accounts, looking at credit card statements I'd neglected while planning the trip. $8,000 in charges over 2 months. Restaurants, electronics, clothing, none of them mine. Cara was listed as an authorized user, something I had never signed for. I started creating a spreadsheet, documenting every irregularity, each unauthorized change, each lie. The laptop screen illuminated my face in the dim basement as columns filled with irrefutable, damning evidence. Above me, floorboards creaked, voices raised. Niles was angry. The old man starting to snoop around asking questions. Cara, fear in her voice. I told you we should have waited. Niles cut her off, contempt dripping from every syllable. We've waited long enough. He doesn't need to know everything. We'll handle it. Besides, we've got cover. All those companies think he's sick. We just need to make sure everyone else believes it too. My fingers paused over the keyboard. They knew. And they were escalating, planning to destroy my credibility, make everyone believe I was incompetent. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the number Elle had given me, and pressed call. Percy, Elle answered on the second ring. I looked at the spreadsheet, column after column of their calculated betrayal. Above me, the argument had faded to murmurs. I need help, I said, the words steadying my entire body. And I think I'm ready to fight back. I woke the next morning with something sharper than purpose, controlled rage. I dressed carefully, slacks, a button-down shirt, good shoes, the clothes of a man conducting serious business. First stop, Riverton General Electric's customer service office on Lakeview Avenue. The representative, Sandra, typed, clicked, and scrolled. 3 months ago, changed by Cara Patterson. She presented herself as your authorized representative, said you were experiencing health decline. I never authorized that, I interrupted, my voice level. I have no health issues. I just led a 2-week educational tour through Europe. Her expression shifted to sympathy. I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce. We require very little documentation for these family changes. I repeated the process at the water bureau, the gas company, the internet provider. Same story everywhere, same lie, same 3-month time frame, coordinated, systematic. By the time I reached my bank, the East Side branch of U.S. Bank, my anger had crystallized. Michael Torres, the customer service representative, pulled up my account. His eyes widened when he saw the charges. The credit card charges, I said, cutting to the chase. I don't recognize any of them. How was my daughter added as an authorized user? I never signed for that. Michael navigated through screens. There's a signature here from 6 months ago. He turned the monitor toward me. I stared at my alleged signature. Close, but wrong. The capital P didn't curve the way mine did. The L didn't loop properly. Someone had practiced, gotten it mostly right, but the details were off. That's not my signature, I said quietly. Are you certain? Sometimes our signatures vary. I'm a retired teacher, I said, my voice staying controlled. I've signed my name thousands of times. Look at my driver's license. The P is completely different. This is forged. Michael's expression grew grave. Then you need to file a police report for identity theft, and we'll need an official dispute form for these charges. How much are we talking about? He calculated. 8,247.32. The number hit like a physical blow. Over $8,000 stolen. We'll start the dispute process immediately, Michael said. But, Mr. Pierce, this happens more often than you'd think with elderly clients. I'm not incompetent, I interrupted. I'm being defrauded. There's a difference. My last stop was Stephen Blake's notary office near Oak Ridge Park. Stephen had notarized my will years ago. Stephen, I need to verify my will is still intact. He retrieved the file. Everything looked normal. The house would go to Cara upon my death, as intended. But, Stephen said, squinting at his notes, you should check your property title recently. Why? In Riverton City, if someone has access to your documents, they might try adding themselves to a title deed through a quitclaim. It creates a nightmare to untangle. My stomach dropped. How do I find out? Official title search. I can order it now. Rush processing takes 2 to 3 business days. I paid for it immediately. The weight of the ticking clock, 72 hours until that revelation, was unbearable. When I returned home, the house was empty. I descended to the basement and spread everything across my makeshift desk. The spreadsheet now had a new line. Property title, pending investigation results in 3 days. I photographed every document, uploading everything to secure cloud storage. Evening settled in. I heard the front door open, voices returning, then raised voices again. Niles, angry. The old man's been everywhere today. Electric company, bank, notary. He's building the case. Cara, fear choking her voice. What if he goes to the police? He won't. He's too weak, too worried about family image. Niles's tone carried pure contempt. Besides, we've got cover. All those companies think he's sick. We just need to make sure everyone else believes it too. A pause. Then Cara, hesitant. You want to make him look incompetent? We already started. Now we finish. We just accelerate the timeline. I sat motionless, phone in hand. They weren't backing down. They were escalating. I pulled up Ella's contact and pressed call. What did you find? She answered immediately. Everything you warned me about. 3 months of systematic changes, $8,000 in forged charges. They told utility companies I have declining health, and they're planning to discredit me. Percy, this is serious fraud. You need legal representation now. I need more than that. I need them out of my house legally. Okay, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll connect you with Marcus Chen, an eviction attorney. Bring everything. We strike first. I looked at the documents on the desk. They thought I was weak. They thought I was worried about image. They were wrong. I typed a quick email to Chen laying out the fraud and hit send. The whoosh of the email departing felt like a weapon launching. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor of the Continental Tower. The law offices of Chen and Associates were polished and quiet. Marcus Chen, mid-40s, sharp suit, gave me a confident handshake. Mr. Pierce, I've reviewed everything. Let me be direct. Your daughter and son-in-law have committed multiple forms of fraud and financial exploitation. Hearing it stated so plainly made the gravity of the situation hit me like a physical punch. These weren't family problems, they were crimes. Chen walked me through each violation. Unauthorized utility changes, fraud, forged signature on credit card authorization, identity theft, $8,000 in charges. Possible attempted property fraud. Oregon law is clear on eviction. You can issue a 30-day notice without reason. They are, at best, month-to-month tenants. Can we get them out? I asked, my voice tight. Absolutely. But first, lockdown. Today. Before they know what hit them. Surprise is your advantage. They think you're passive. When we strike comprehensively. I signed the retainer agreement. Today, you lock everything down. Tomorrow, I file the eviction notice. Within 72 hours, we submit the police report. No time for counter-strategy. I left his office with a comprehensive list. I immediately visited the bank, closed Cara's authorized user status, and enabled two-factor authentication requiring my phone for any access. Your accounts are now secure, Mr. Pierce. The teller's words were the sweetest music I'd heard all month. Next, credit cards. Blocked. Utility companies' called, documented contact information reverted back to mine, overriding Cara's declining health lie. By late afternoon, I'd locked every financial and digital door they'd jimmied open. Cara's credit card was declined at the local grocery store while attempting to buy expensive steaks. She called the card company in a fury. That account has been closed by the primary cardholder. She drove home, shock replacing fury. Niles, meanwhile, found his laptop blocked from the utility accounts, every password changed. He slammed his laptop closed, the sound echoing through the house. I was reading history in the basement when he stormed in. Old man, you're playing a dangerous game. This is our home now. I stood. My movement made him pause. I stepped forward. Surprisingly, he stepped back. This is my home, Niles. It always has been. And it's time you understood something. I'm done being pushed around. I walked past him toward the stairs. He didn't try to stop me. I climbed past him, leaving him standing frozen in the basement doorway. I sent the eviction notice to Chen's office for filing. I felt a surge of pure, cold power. But the day was not over. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a woman in her 50s holding a county ID badge. Mr. Pierce, I'm Janice Crawford from Adult Protective Services. We received a report expressing concern about your well-being. It's routine. May I come in? The pieces clicked together like tumblers on a lock. Cara's last desperate card. She hadn't just lied to the utility companies. She had tried to have me declared incompetent. I invited her in. We sat in the living room, my reclaimed territory. She pulled out a standardized assessment form. I told her about the European tour, managing logistics, itineraries, money. Someone was concerned about cognitive decline, she said, watching my face carefully. I organized and led a group of retired educators through Rome, Florence, and Venice, I countered, meeting her gaze. I managed all the funds and schedules. I believe I am managing my affairs competently. After 20 minutes of precise, lucid answers, Janice smiled, folding her form. I see no evidence of concern, Mr. Pierce. You are clearly organized, lucid, and managing your affairs competently. The report was anonymous? I asked. The report was based on claims of paranoia and confusion regarding family members. I can assure you, I have no reason to pursue this further. After Janice left, I sank onto the couch, the realization settling like ice water. My own daughter had tried to destroy my credibility, to strip me of my agency and capacity. 20 minutes later, Elle arrived. They pulled their last card, she said, sitting beside me. They're panicking, Paul. They lost the money. They lost the access. Now they tried to take your mind, and they failed. That's what matters. Her presence grounded me. I had been tested, assessed, and certified competent by the county, thanks to Cara's malice. This was now leverage. I looked at the clock. Chen's courier would deliver the physical eviction notices soon. I had been humiliated, robbed, and slandered. Now I would respond. Morning brought the courier. I signed for a large envelope from Chen and Associates, returned to the basement, and opened it with deliberate slowness. 3 copies of the formal 30-day eviction notices, legally precise and final. The memory of the APS visit hardened my resolve. Time to end this. I climbed the stairs. Everyone had gathered for breakfast. Cara at the stove, Niles at the table, Victor and Bethany with their coffee. I walked in, placed 1 eviction notice at Niles's plate, 1 at Cara's, and 1 at the Dunn's. The papers landed with quiet, undeniable finality. "What is this?" Cara's voice, already strained, knew the answer. 30-day notice of eviction, I said, my tone level and factual. For you, Niles, and his parents. You have 1 month to find other housing. Cara went pale. The spatula dropped from her hand, clattering loudly against the stove. "Dad, you can't be serious." "Completely serious." Niles started to stand, voice rising, threatening. "You can't just—" I cut him off, my voice sharp for the first time. "I can. I have. This is my property. You have been notified. You have 30 days. Victor Dunn picked up his copy, read it, and showed it to Bethany. Their faces registered shock, but also confirmation. This made everything real. Cara's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Dad, don't do this. We can talk." I turned toward the living room, refusing to retreat to the basement. I sat in my own armchair, pulled out my phone, and texted Elle. "It's done. They've been served." The next 3 days blurred into chaos. Cara alternated between tearful apologies and frustrated silence. Niles took the opposite approach, aggressive and mocking. "We're not leaving," he challenged, cornering me in the kitchen. "What are you going to do? Call the police on your own daughter?" "If necessary, yes." He slammed his hand on the counter. "You're making a mistake, old man. The mistake was letting you stay this long." Upstairs, Victor and Bethany heard everything. Their discomfort grew palpable. On day 3, Victor knocked on the basement door. I opened it to find both of them looking exhausted. "Paul, we need to talk, all of us. Niles says you're overreacting. Your email claims fraud and theft. The eviction notices are on the table. We need the truth tonight." 7:00 p.m., I said. "But I'm bringing a witness, a friend, someone objective." They exchanged glances, then nodded agreement. I texted Elle immediately. "Family confrontation tonight. Can you come?" Her response: "Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring the documentation we organized." Evening arrived. I arranged the living room deliberately, chairs in a semicircle. I took my armchair, Elle beside me. Cara and Niles sat opposite, as far from me as possible. The room felt like a courtroom. Victor cleared his throat. "All right, show us everything. We deserve to know what kind of mess our son has brought us into." I opened my folder and laid the evidence on the coffee table. Bank statements, utility company confirmations, and the photograph of the forged signature. "This is fraud," I stated plainly. $8,147.32 in unauthorized credit card use, a forged signature to grant access to my accounts, and 4 utility companies given the lie that I have declining health. Cara gasped. Niles leaned forward, ready to deny. "And finally," I continued, silencing Niles with a look, I pulled out my phone. "I have evidence that this was not a simple mistake. This is a deliberate campaign to control and exploit me, ending with an attempt to have me declared legally incompetent by Adult Protective Services." Victor and Bethany's faces drained of color. Victor reached for the phone I offered him, but before he could touch it, the front door buzzer sounded. Long, sharp, and unexpected. "Who is that?" Cara whispered, panic in her eyes. I stood up, straight and steady. "That," I said, looking directly at Niles, whose face had gone slack with sudden fear, "is the police. Detective Miller is here. I told you I was done being pushed around. I'm not just showing you the fraud tonight, Niles. I'm reporting it." The buzzer sounded again, sharp and insistent, shattering the terrible silence of my living room. I didn't move toward the door. I didn't have to. The truth I had delivered was already tearing the room apart. "The police, Niles," I repeated, my voice quiet, almost mournful. "The fraud report is being filed now." Niles surged forward, rage finally cracking his controlled facade. "You wouldn't dare, old man. She's your daughter." "She stole $8,147.32, I shot back. "You lied to the county, filed false reports about my health, and attempted to strip me of my rights. That's not family, Niles, that's felony." Cara slid from her chair, hands clasped, a desperate, broken mirror of the woman she used to be. "Daddy, please. We can fix this. Please don't let a detective come in." Ella stood, her movement calm and measured, a witness to everything. "Detective Miller is here because of criminal fraud, Cara. The time for fixing this was 3 months ago before you filed the first lie. Now, this is about consequences." A uniformed officer appeared in the doorway, signaling that Detective Miller was waiting outside. "I'll be right there," I told the officer, never taking my eyes off Niles. "Niles, sit down." "Cara, you need to decide if you want to be here when I give the statement, or if you want to leave now. The consequence of the financial fraud is here." The weight of the accusation forced Niles backward a step. He collapsed back into the couch cushions, but his face was white with a fear that finally transcended his arrogance. He didn't fear me, he feared the law. I walked to the door, opened it, and greeted Detective Miller, a serious-faced woman who carried a thick file. We talked in hushed tones in the foyer for 5 minutes, Elle standing near to ensure I stayed factual. I handed her the spreadsheet, the bank printouts, and the comparison of the forged P on the credit card application versus my driver's license. When I returned to the living room, Victor Dunn held my phone in his hand. He must have picked it up from the coffee table. He was staring at the screenshot I had taken of the text messages between Niles and Cara. "Niles." The old man starting to snoop. "Cara, I told you we should have waited." Niles. "We've waited long enough. When he dies, the house is ours anyway." Victor's face was a map of devastating realization. He threw the phone onto the coffee table. He turned on Niles, and the thunder in his voice rattled the windows. "Niles, is this true? All of it? The money, the health reports, waiting for him to die?" Niles, seeing his father's support evaporate, tried a desperate lunge for denial. "It's exaggerated, Dad. Percy is unstable. He's old and confused, that's why Cara had to—" "Stop!" Bethany cried out, raising her head, tears streaking her face. "We're not stupid, Niles. We heard the APS lady on the phone. We heard you arguing last night. Your father is perfectly lucid." She looked at me. "Paul, I am so sorry. We had no idea." Cara, seeing her only remaining support system crumble, broke completely. She slid from the couch to her knees, hands clasped like a final prayer. "Daddy, please, please forgive me." Sobs broke her words. "I didn't know it would go this far. Niles kept saying you wouldn't even notice, that you were going to leave everything to me anyway, so what did it matter?" The confession spilled out. "He said you'd die soon, and we deserve to enjoy the house now. That you were selfish, keeping it all to yourself. I didn't want to do the APS call, I swear I didn't, but he said you'd take everything away." "Cara," my voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I gave you everything, paid for your education, gave you and Niles a home when you needed it. All I needed was respect. I believe you are sorry you got caught, Cara. I believe you're sorry you're losing what you wanted. I don't think you're sorry for what you did to me." Victor stood abruptly, grabbing Bethany's hand. "We're packing tonight now. We will not be part of this." Victor and Bethany left the room and returned moments later with their suitcases. They shook my hand. "We're sorry, Paul." "We should have seen it sooner." "Thank you for telling us the truth, Paul. We deserve to know what kind of man we raised." They left. The front door closed with a click that sounded like an execution. Cara stood up, walked upstairs without a word. Niles followed, shooting me a look of pure, concentrated hatred that promised future violence. The last hammer blow was still pending, the title deed result that would tell me if they owned half my house. The house developed a tense, hollow silence. 26 days remained on the eviction clock. Cara and Niles were mostly gone. Apartment hunting, only returning late at night to whisper and argue. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was Marcus Chen. Paul? His voice was businesslike. The title search came back. The good news? They failed. The quit-claim deed was filed, but Stephen Blake's office, the notary, flagged the signature inconsistency. The county clerk put a temporary hold. It's not legally valid. I leaned against the counter, exhaling like a collapsing surf. They tried to steal the house itself. They tried, Chen confirmed. It was audacious. We've already moved to officially void the attempted filing. No new filing can be made without your personal appearance and government ID. You own the house, Paul. 100%. The house of cards is collapsing. Chen's legal victory was the final nail in their coffin. Later that afternoon, the house felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. I was working in the living room when I heard movement upstairs, furtive and quick. I walked to the bottom of the stairs, my body tense. Niles appeared at the top landing, carrying a heavy duffel bag. His face was a mask of cold fury. "You think you won, old man?" he spat. "You think a piece of paper and a cop can stop what's coming? We have rights. We're not leaving in 26 days. The eviction notice is legally binding, Niles. You have every incentive to leave quietly, given the ongoing police investigation into the grand theft and identity fraud." He took a step down. "You'll regret filing that report, Percy. You will regret turning your back on your own daughter." "The mistake was letting you use my daughter's loyalty as a weapon," I said, climbing 2 steps to meet him on the landing. "I will never regret protecting myself." Niles stopped 3 steps above me. The duffel bag dropped with a heavy thud. He was radiating pure, unrestrained menace. "We have 24 hours to leave, not 30 days, he hissed. "If you force our hand, if you send that deputy here on day 24, I promise you, the damage to this house will cost you more than that whole European tour." "You threaten my property now?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. "Fine, I'll make a note of that for Detective Miller. But here's the reality, Niles. You have 30 days. And if you attempt to shorten that window, if you attempt one act of vandalism, one malicious move, I have an attorney who will file a 24-hour restraining order and have you escorted out in handcuffs within the hour. You will be on the street with a criminal record and 0 notice." Niles picked up the duffel bag, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He saw the cold, rational strategy behind my eyes. He turned, walked back up the hall, and disappeared into the bedroom. The tension only broke on day 24. A sheriff's deputy, Martinez, knocked mid-morning, a formality I'd arranged through Chen. A rental truck sat in the driveway, half loaded. Cara and Niles were carrying the last boxes. Neither of them spoke to me. Cara carried the last box of personal items. She reached the threshold, set the box down, and turned back. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," I said, and meant it, even through everything. "But love doesn't mean letting you hurt me." She picked up her box and walked through the door. Niles followed without a word. The door closed. I stood alone in my house, truly mine now. I pulled out my bank statement and looked at the $2,000 I had given Cara for the roof repair. The funds were immediately deposited into a savings account that Cara and Niles shared. It was the seed money for the fraud. I knew I had one final call to Marcus Chen about the undisclosed fraud money. I walked up the stairs to the master bedroom that strangers had occupied. The house was silent. When the tears stopped, I began making a list. Late afternoon, the doorbell rang. Ella stood there with painting supplies, cleaning materials, and takeout dinner. "You didn't have to do this." "I know. I wanted to. Besides, you helped me restore my confidence after my son. Let me help restore your house." We started in the master bedroom. While cleaning the back of the master closet, I found a small hidden velvet bag. Inside were 3 crisp USD 800 gift cards to an electronics store, purchased with the fraudulent credit card money. I photographed it immediately for Detective Miller. As we worked, the shared rhythm felt right. We were painting opposite walls one afternoon, a soft blue. Ella paused, looking at me over the roller. "Paul, what now? What's next for you? For us?" I set down my roller, crossed the floor, and took her paint-sticky hands. "I think maybe it's time to start a new life. Would you want to be part of that plan?" "I already am," she said. The next morning, however, brought a chilling reminder. In the mail was a thick, unmarked envelope. Inside was a photograph of my house, taken from the street. On the back, handwritten in Niles's precise script, was a single chilling message. "This isn't over. I still have the keys, Paul." The victory was not complete. He was escalating again, this time to intimidation and a threat of home invasion. The freedom I felt vanished, replaced by a spike of raw fear. I immediately called Marcus Chen. "He's threatening me. He's claiming he has keys." "We're escalating," Chen said instantly. "I'm filing for a temporary restraining order based on the mail threat and the prior fraud filing. I'll send a locksmith to change every exterior lock on your house right now on my account. You will have new keys in 2 hours." I watched the locksmith arrive, the heavy clanking of metal on metal echoing through the house. The lock change felt like the real finale. The physical boundary was secured. The emotional boundary was already established. I walked to the living room window and watched the locksmith finish his work. The threat was real, but so was my response. I had lost the soft, naive man I was, but I had gained a man who would fight for his space and his peace. The house was mine again, not just legally but spiritually. The soft blue of the master bedroom and the warm cream of the living room felt like a new beginning. We had finished the work. Ella was there, looking at the transformation. "This house has good bones, Paul," she said, stepping inside the master bedroom. "Just needed someone to care for it properly." "I'd like to keep caring for it," I said, taking her hand. "If you'd help me." "I'd like that very much." Late August arrived with the kind of morning that makes you believe in second chances. I was preparing my preferred coffee blend in the kitchen when the mail arrived. Among the bills, I found a handwritten envelope, Cara's familiar script. I stood at the counter for a long moment before opening it. The letter was several pages, tear-stained. She wrote that she'd started therapy, was working full nursing shifts, and was trying to pay down some of the non-fraudulent debts. "Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness now, maybe never, but I'm trying to understand how I became someone who could hurt you that way. Niles and I are figuring things out, whether we even should be together." He pushed a lot of it, but I let him. "That's on me. I hope someday I can be the daughter you deserved." I read it twice. My eyes were wet, but I wasn't sure if it was sadness, relief, or a quiet hope. Ella returned, carrying a basket of warm blueberry scones. I handed her the letter. She read in silence, then folded it and gave it back. "You don't have to decide today or this year. Maybe she'll become someone you can trust again. Maybe not. But that's her journey, Paul. Not yours." I took her hand. I'd spent years believing I owed my daughter everything simply because she was my daughter. I had to cut that relationship out to survive. "You weren't cruel for demanding respect," Ella said. "You were just a man who finally chose himself." Early September morning. Elle's car was in the driveway. I locked my front door, my house, my rules, my peace, and carried the last bag to the car. We'd packed for 2 weeks, heading for Crater Lake. Elle started the engine. "Ready?" I settled into the passenger seat. "More than ready." As we pulled away, I looked at Elle, silver hair catching the sunlight, confident hands on the wheel. "I thought my life chapter was closing," I said, taking her free hand. She squeezed back. "Now you understand that life continues as long as you let it continue. You chose yourself, and somehow we found each other, Paul, at exactly the right time." The road curved ahead, disappearing into trees. We drove toward Crater Lake and whatever came after, ready for the next chapter together. The victory wasn't the eviction. It was the freedom to choose the family I build. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.